Gqeberha, what up? It's the Headspace, another conversation. This is your brother from the ancient mother, Vijay, and I will not dare to introduce the individual next to me. He's just gonna bust the mic himself because I'm standing next to one of the most important OGs, one of the most important art practitioners at Gqeberha, and perhaps maybe with South Africa yonke. One time, who am I standing next to, Puti?
DJ Sebz, Sebz, born here in the Nelson Mandela Bay. I've lived in many spaces, Soweto, Njoli, Shukshukuma, you know, so now I can say Tilipainar, basically. You know? I'm in the media space.
Nice one.
But get baptized in the culture of hip-hop because hip-hop was just the food that we had at home, you know, with my little brother. Being someone who's Christian and being in choirs, we were like, hey, so even in our spirituality, we use hip-hop as a vehicle to praise, worship, and basically express ourselves.
I love it.
You know? And because hip-hop is vast and it's a culture, I was able to get an opportunity to document the culture, you know, going to St. Thomas, the B-boys, taking pictures there with my camera, and trying by all means not to be one because hip hop is vast,
multi-dimensional.
Yeah, so that's how I'm to make sure that nobody don't in the hip hop space. So I've been focusing on making sure that the hip hop culture is vibrant. Sometimes even forget myself. I remember recently on an interview that I was meant to focus on my product because I've got a product out, and I spent 13 minutes talking about hip hop. Breakfast show.
That's when you know it's love, yo.
Breakfast show. So in a nutshell, I am that person that loves hip hop.
Gotcha.
Freelance for Hype Magazine for the Eastern Cape. Freelance for
blow the horns.
Freelance for Beat Magazine as well. For fashion, and I've done a couple of things in trying, you know, to make sure that the culture is there through KQFM, a hip hop show called Voice of Hip Hop.
Right.
Yeah, about 2004, and that's when I really thought, okay, this thing of radio presenting is my thing. I love it, and I'll do it for free.
Folks, Nivil, this is a man who has stood in what can be termed as the middle ground between the people and the practitioners. This middle ground, famously known as media, which literally means middle, is there to facilitate this conversation and help the audience understand how to find what works for them and help the artists to understand the people who really are there looking for what they are doing. So in this whole dialogue that the middle ground, that the media plays to help people understand what kind of art forms speak to them and help the artists understand what people can consume the art form, it beckons the question. We have a rich hip-hop culture. You've just said it so beautifully, DJ Sebz, you were a dude baptized by hip-hop but transcended it going into the media culture, and there's nobody perfect for this conversation because I want us to address, does South African hip-hop lack media representation? We live in a world that's governed by capitalist rules, and capitalism is a bit like a supermarket. You go into the supermarket, you already know what you want because to some extent you've acquired a taste for the kind of things you like, and you go through what are called aisles. So if you want your cereals, you know if you're a cornflakes person or Shama with peaks. You know if you are going into your Snap, Crackle and Pop, or you're trying to get your kids a little bit of those OTs. What am I saying? I'm saying capitalism segments things into genres, styles, segmented industries that are able to work as spaces that are there to attend to the people who do certain kinds of crafts. Now, hip-hop is something stemming from America, translated to the world, taken by South Africans who mixed it up and gave it a South African flavor. And through the years of the existence of South African hip-hop, we have by far and large not had a mass influence in the culture yet. I would argue that even though we have the squatter camps, the Proverbs, the Pro Kids, even though we had the Ricky Ricks, bless his soul, the AKAs, the Casper in your vests, we are still in a place where those artists, as great as they are, still tend to what can still be termed as pop culture. So if you are going into this aisle, this supermarket, you would still find that the pop culture section has things from a little bit of everywhere, but it still attains to a certain kind of quality. What does pop culture do? Pop culture helps people wind down and escape from the duties of capitalism.
Yep.
That's why a lot of pop culture is about dancing and letting go. And there is this misconception that in order to be a successful artist, you need to present yourself through the lens of popular culture. Hip-hop is not necessarily popular culture, although some aspects of hip-hop appeal to it. Everybody nowadays is wearing sneakers that come from a tradition where people turned sneakers that were used for playing basketball and tennis into fashion items. And nowadays, the clothing, from the hoodies to the sports gear to what is now called the sports luxe look, fashion is been influenced by a culture that we still hold very dear to as something that is so holistic. And yet, the culture in and of itself still doesn't have what I think is a big enough aisle in South Africa. So we're here to ask the question, if a Casper is famous, why is a Hinfatic Tabs not given the same credit? Is it impossible for an artist who wants more lyricism, more education, more abstract insight about the things that pertain to this world, a different sound? Is it impossible for those kind of rap practitioners? Is it impossible for graffiti artists? Is it impossible for b-boys? Is it impossible for the people who actually gave birth to hip-hop, DJs, to come into the foreground and have, again, a middle ground that speaks for them? South Africa has a demographic highly driven by dance culture, Goodman. And because it's highly driven by dance culture, I'm here with you today to ask the important question, Yogubana. Do we truly lack a media representation, a middle ground that speaks for hip-hop artists? And if we do or if we don't, what can be done about this? So share your insights with me on this matter. Number one, do you think South African hip-hop lacks media representation?
Okay, I will start by saying that if you look at South Africa in terms of media, the media is in Johannesburg. Proper media where if indabas Pumid, everybody knows about it. WHP passes, the media makes sure that information here Puma, it's going to News 24, it's going to Metro FM, you know.
Yeah.
So everybody knows, but WHP is no more.
Yeah,
you know? It's now, it's instant, you know. So the media in Johannesburg, all the media houses, for them to be able to be that machine there is capital, Jimbuchi,
right.
There's money. So a representation in hip-hop will be according to abantu that are inclined and knowing about the culture and follow the culture. Ingaba bakhona ngaphakathi, bakhona, but not bonke. They have the zeal, they have the inchisakalo to literally saying we'll put these stories on. I want to make an example. There is a Y magazine. We used to buy that magazine and read it.
One of the most powerful magazines, yeah.
You see that? And hip-hop representation. Although it was an urban culture magazine,
right.
but you will see
a hip-hop segment, yeah.
Proper stories. And then Hype magazine during the time of Mizi and Simone. That magazine, you would read a story of, for an example, Eminem, and get the in-depth of what Eminem is doing and how he's doing it and all those things.
Right.
From a journalist in South Africa, but able to depict a picture for you to understand.
Right.
So, abantu that I didn't know, Hype magazine was able to, you know, get me into the psyche of those people. Robo the technician, you read an article about him, you're like, okay, this is a proper MC. Before I could even meet him, before I could even have conversation with him. You
met him?
Yes.
Blessings.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know she because I chilled with him up a motherware.
Oh wow.
You see those things?
Yeah, we don't even know that shit.
You see that stuff?
That's real talk.
I chilled with him here in Motherwell. So
Shout out to Robo.
Yeah.
Peace.
When it comes to media representation, icon, but we are using the same house or the same vessel in order for us to push Ezinda. Meaning that if there's 10 articles, the popular culture, there's only 2 or 3 articles as a Pumangati. Unless we are dying, like we've been dying, you're gonna see more hip-hop people being pushed to the forefront of media. Because now Rick is gone, you're gonna see everyone Yamtanda, you're gonna see WHP.
The tragedy trends.
Yes, you know?
Yeah.
But these people, when it comes to their hip-hop activities, even WHP was more famous dancing than being a rap artist.
MC.
You see those things. Proverb is more famous being the idol presenter more than being the artist that is supposed. So he even cries about the media akuyo naye, because it's hard to push yourself once you are given the microphone in order for you to represent whoever you're supposed to represent. So alternative platforms are the ones ababalekele kuzo abantu be-hip hop.
Yeah.
Because there is less media representation to push lyricism.
DJ Sebz, you address a very crucial issue. We are using one house in the sense that we're using broadband media to address so many different aisles. We spoke about the supermarket analogy. And the comeback is always, well, no, hip-hop as a movement, hip-hop as a genre in South Africa is niche, it's narrow. And the reason why we don't see the reflection of a lot of media houses, PR specialists, and marketing specialists, and advertising specialists directly addressing the hip-hop movement and the culture and the people is because they say it isn't viable. Hip-hop as a whole wouldn't make enough money as a house artist, wouldn't make enough money even as a gospel artist. So this has been the argument from the side of media personalities and practitioners currently active in South Africa, that as they stand in the middle, they feel that there is no audience that is big enough for them to attend to the hip-hop artist and translate that to an audience. Do you think that's a fact, or do you think this is a fiction created?
Okay, in me approaching this question, I will basically try and quote one of my favorite authors, Malcolm Gladwell. The brother in The Tipping Point, he talks about many things, the medicine or spread of viruses and all that stuff. And also, he speaks of, in Dr. Niche, the Nubu he speaks about Amachita Telekonene and Amachita and the Hash Papi. And the Hash Papi, it's a shoe that is made for everyone. But akuko zoom lens pakuyoba like ezinye brands.
It wasn't popular.
It wasn't popular at all. But Lamachita pakla kona yabo made a Hash Papi to look cool, and people wanted to jump in there nabo bangi Hash Papi so that they can look cool.
Right.
And hip hop has done that.
Yeah.
For popular culture.
Yeah.
Hip hop, in its entirety, people took pieces of hip hop,
right,
and exploited it, used it, commercialized it, and then benefit ngendlela zabo. Meaning that they would take the rapper and make a gimmick out of him because they want to make money, and then succeed in that. There's never been a hip hop gatekeeper, someone who's going to say, le hip hop, anything else it's not. Even hip hop heads, even hip hop heads, you know, succumb to that thing. Yoba, maybe let's water it down a bit. We want to be heard, you know. So if we don't present hip hop as it is, the MC, if we don't present the MC with all its poetic structures, right, then it's not gonna be making radio airplay. It's not gonna be making TV and all those things. So let's try. The beat must be you know,
right.
okanye into ethile kwi-lyricism yakho mayihle. Hey, have a hook pha mayibe catchy.
Let's make it more danceable.
Yes, you see that.
Make it sound like Kwaito.
So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy for hip hop to basically shine unless someone else outside of the hip hop validates it. And londo leyo ibhlungu to people who maintain that this culture is supposed to be this way. So we want hip hop to evolve, but not at the extent of diminishing what hip hop is. Because now, if you wanna say hip hop evolving, because ufake ezinye elements, because that's not evolving.
Right.
It's basically watering it down. It's like having a good brand here and say it's evolved by Galamans. It didn't evolve. It's not the same thing.
Right.
You know? So I believe, in answering your question, we still need to have an outlet that will focus on hip hop and hip hop as something bigger than just the music.
Right.
You know? And also, in my closing, we need to make people understand that hip hop can be studied. Hip hop can basically go into universities of higher learning
as a legitimate mode of literature and art.
Yes, sir.
Right.
You know, until maybe abantu who are hip hop, they don't understand even what hip hop is.
Right.
Maybe we still need to educate them. You know, that some of the people, yes, there are people who studied, you know, in terms of how movement of the body and how it, you know, studied UPE.
Yeah.
Upradumza is not just, you know,
a b-boy.
Yes. You know, some of the DJs are more than just DJs. The scratching and all the stuff they do as intricate. There's more to a DJ.
It's an art form.
Yes. The guys who do graffiti, those guys, it's more. It's art. You know. You know. So abanye babo, they are commissioned to do big things, but yes, it's money. But when it comes to art, we still need preservation.
Right. Damn, DJ Seb has spoken to such
right.
a broad range of the issues facing South African hip hop. It makes me think of a very enticing phrase I saw on the internet, which never left me. It says, "Trend is always late," and it had me thinking. You can't find a trend, a popular movement, that was not at some point seen as a fringe or an underground movement. And what I've noticed about the way that capitalism works is that capitalism deploys people who study what's happening in the underground, and if it's viable enough, they bring it to the foreground of media. Nowadays, South Africa is being blanketed by an atmosphere of endless piano. Piano, not so long ago, was a fringe movement in certain corners of Pitori and Jozi. You know what I mean? So what we are noticing is that if we, as practitioners of art forms that are still considered fringe, understand our own commercial value, we are in an age where we don't necessarily need established big advertising and media companies. Now we have platforms that could possibly give us the ability to take the power in our own hands. You spoke so clearly to Malcolm Gladwell's analogy and how every niche becomes popular by the fact that those people who are able to confidently display it and express it make other people curious and wonder what could be the magic about this thing. And I'm one of those people who firmly believe and understand and have looked into this aspect that South Africans who are confident enough to express hip-hop, whether it be through the b-boying, whether it be through the graffiti, whether it be through the unapologetic MCing in the name of saying it is spoken word poetry. Because we have MCs, but as you mentioned earlier on, they have relegated their role to being people of the party, to being people of the dance floor, to being people whose MCing is more dedicated to escaping than reflecting. And there are MCs out there wonderful MCs. I'm talking about people like Lalipoy, people like Sumpa Bondo, people like Manelisi, people like, OK Malum Coolcat, who doesn't get the recognition he deserves, who are able to straddle the line of being insightful, culturally valuable, and at the very same time doing something which can be considered alternative or avant-garde. So we've established the fact that, number one, we do lack media representation. And it's because that the media has narrowed the market down to a pop culture filter. South Africa is notoriously known for having a very limited pop culture scope. We know that if I went to Afropop, if I went to some kind of dance music, if I went to some kind of gospel, then it's almost impossible for you to make it to the foreground. This is one of our issues as a country, and I feel like media companies have followed suit. The media has allowed this misconception that South Africans only listen to Xhosa people with guitars who talk about pain, and gospel artists with suits and pointy shoes who spread the worship of God, and maybe the occasional DJ and the occasional rapper who's able to make people dance. We've seen what is called a stereotype create itself, and it's made people feel like this stereotype is all there can be. So in kind of bringing ourselves closer to the conclusion, I want us to kind of investigate whether or not is it possible to break the stereotype that's been created that about South Africa, if you're rapping, you need to do an dikokelebao because there's a gospel market, you need to work with an Afro-pop artist, or you need to somehow just get a piano nigga or somebody who's DJs and just get people dancing. And what that does is that it kind of diminishes all these other art forms of hip-hop. And I was here earlier on with Prince Masuku talking about how to win SA as a rapper. And Prince Masuku, very important man, doing a lot of great work in the marketing space. And yet, he himself shares this very curious understanding that commercialism dominates what can be considered marketable and viable. So if I were here with Prince Masuku with you, I'm sure Prince Masuku would say to us, your niggas is dreaming because there is a commercial demand and this commercial demand must be met. So I'm here to say to DJ Sebz, do you think that artists outside of dancing, outside of this gospel, outside of this Afro-pop, which we've been made to believe is all South Africa is, can artists like that find a market? Are there people who can appreciate a Lalipoy to a point where Lalipoy gets to feed his families off of a South African market and he doesn't have to tour Europe? Are there people who can appreciate a Supambondo? Are there people who can appreciate a Lymphatic Tabs and the work that IAPTES as a label is doing with Abana Bafana, Yugen Black Rock? Yugen Black Rock had to do an album that crossed over with TDE to get her to the global market. She was just that abstract chick. South Africa. I could make many examples of people who were doing the unapologetic hip-hop that they wanted to do, but because media was not attending to that, it wasn't known by everybody. And when they bounce over to the international world, all of a sudden we are proud of them. So I want us to come and address this thing. Can that whole Afro-pop gospel dancing market, this misconception that we have that this is all South Africa is, it's filled with people who dance, worship God, and like singing about their pain. Is that what we are, or is that yet still another capitalist trick to make us feel like that's all we can market? Is there truly money, and is there truly viability in talking about social political issues, in hosting ciphers, and in doing all of this spirit in the name of hip-hop? I know it's a deep question, but I know you're a deep man. Let's attend to it.
If we have to win this war, if it's a war, we need people, we need supporters. And you're asking me, bakhona na.
Yeah.
Bakhona
the media,
yes. Bakhona na. Yes, I believe bakhona babantu. It's just that when it comes to the outlet, who are the people taking the music out? Who are the people showing the culture? They are still looking at the people who only show a speck of what is happening. So the only people you're going to see is the people on an advert flipping there for a second there and then
Yeah.
The only MC you want to see is the one who's going to be rapping about the chocolate checkers and all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's how the media wants you to relate. So we need to come out of what we see and search for alternatives. There are a lot of podcasts ezithetha about many things that involves hip hop. Nance enye yayo le ndikuyo.
Yeah.
Meaning that there's always going to be an alternative for people who want the culture. Ukuba ithi qabavu in terms of abantu abazawuthi bayijonge bayimamele and consume it. If there's a new track in the streets, uzayiva ngomnye umuntu bayekuse ubani uphethe into strong.
Yeah.
You know? So even us as hip hop heads, let's not be afraid to say out there is not doing it. Call me the right who's doing it.
Yeah.
Meaning sharing those posts about a new rapper coming up. And also what Stumi is doing,
Freestyle Fridays.
Freestyle Fridays.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to that.
Freestyle Fridays. You know, if I see timeline, they shut up quickly because those MCs there, the proper, they have the lyricism. So I believe we have a big media platform that is based in Johannesburg, up in South Africa. And we have small platforms as based in Mpumalanga or in Eastern Cape and all those other places, in Nanda. In KZN, there are radio stations who have hip-hop shows. And those hip-hop shows, those songs, they go into the playlist. And that's beautiful. Same as BFM, what they're trying to do, have a segment of hip-hop, but those songs must infiltrate to the playlist. Okay. So if we call in here, things like tapping out of the beat, we were listening to that stuff.
Yeah.
Channel O while LSA Park or SABC 1. You know, though there's a lot of things Tina's calling us. Esikonda ezi zinto bakhange zisuke hip hop ngeyikude ngoku. Okay. You know,
so what you're saying that Sebz, we shouldn't look at the traditional media.
No,
we should take the thing, take initiative on ourselves.
We do, but at the same time, not try and do it the way they do it.
Right. Okay. Can I just intersect and say, I think any artist who wants to participate in today's market has obviously seen that pop culture is dominant, and when you feel like you do not cater to something that's popular, it's up to the artist's belief in what they feel is valuable to them. Everything that's being done is valuable. As one MC once put it and said, there's a market to everything. And I think for those watching, whether you're doing the weirdest alternative funk, jazz influenced, if you're doing hip-hop with a little bit of metal, if you're doing bakanga, I think it's time for artists who are quote-unquote fringe to have confidence that you are not an oddity. If you like this thing, clearly there's more people who must like it, because life works in that way. Nobody is a special case, isolated, or famously said, no man is an island, no human is an island, no person is an island. So if you feel isolated in some weird interest that you have, and you feel like your music does not kind of communicate across what is popular, believe that there's definitely weirdos like you out there who will relate to what you're doing. That's why I make an example of artists like a Supambondo. He's really weird. Shout out to Supambondo, but you know you are weird. And other artists who know they are strange. And in the actual definition of the word strange, estranged, cut off from that which is familiar to us. Because most of the time we don't notice that I see clearly because we chose, see clearly because it was given to us. It was mainly the only option that was there. And I think the thing about capitalism is they might be smart enough to take what's new, but they're never smart enough to anticipate what that thing will be. They never knew that piano would be the next thing. They never knew when trap was coming through. So just like they don't know now and they're just waiting for the next big thing, you can be that. If you understand that what is strange will eventually become what's familiar, take your strange, make it familiar, meet with your strange people, make strange shows, and eventually you'll find strange people in media spaces who have enough confidence to turn the strange into the familiar. And for all of those media professionals who we're talking to right here, have confidence in the strange market. We live in a world where right now the internet has helped people finally open up to a whole lot of the strange things they liked. People listen to everything, and now they realize that the market is not as narrow as they thought. So, in conclusion, we lack media representation, but a lot of that media representation is old media. Old media is really dying out. And when I say old media, I mean the huge buildings with the people in the suits, smoking the cigars, talking about the PEEs, and having the adverts. TV as a whole is dying out. You're a radio personality, so I don't know what you'd feel if I told you radio might be dying.
I'm in the podcast space as well.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
Transition.
understand radio and television. The corner clash up about to focus on anymore. You know,
Right.
and maybe it's today because not everyone. For us to basically have adverts, listenership.
Yes.
If
you watch it.
Sikona internet. So that if okwazi umamela radio phone yakho you want to remember the internet, we can get us there. So we can say enhanced we advertisement. But don't do sinabantu abaninzi ku internet. Look at our
20,000
views.
Likes there
Likes.
on Facebook. So now we diversify,
Most definitely.
You know, we can't be stuck in the one space.
Right.
About Gqeberha, from my side, when it comes to the MC, the rapper, let's not shy away from the fact that if you want to make it and you want to make it the traditional way, there's public relations practitioners. And if you can't hire one, gather abantu around you who can have those skills.
Get a team.
Yes, so that abantu push. I've seen it happening with Zulu, Big Zulu.
Big Zulu,
You know, and other people.
Yeah.
Abanye abantu, they want to be signed. And London until you understand usayinelwa ntoni, so that ungabuyeli kuthi bayangiqhatha.
Exactly.
You know, because knowing that usayinelwe ntoni, because usayinwa is basically employed.
Right.
Yeah.
Know your business, know your worth, know your value, and understand that whatever you're doing, it has worth, it has value, and as a result, you can make some element of business with it. We live in a country where there's so-called digital divide. A lot of people don't have internet because it's data is criminal. But I know we're working. It's a revolution. I think what we have established with DJ Sebz is that we are lacking media representation, but we're definitely not lacking creativity. And creativity is what determines where the media goes. So trust your creativity, and the media will follow. One
last thing before we close off. Sebz, please tell us about a bit about your initiatives, especially Easy Lives, and also
plug.
Yeah, and also coffee. Sebz.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Easy Lives, it's a platform where abantu can load their content, video, profiles, pictures, even events. It's COVID, but it's more relevant now that people are looking at alternative ways to publish. We have 100,000 visitors on the website.
Wow.
You know, still more artists to come through. What's mean, there's a cipher that I'm working on. I did only one, but in terms of finding venues. I have one venue that I've already
secured.
Okay. So the new venues, Cypher Life. Apple, we're talking artists that are unknown. Yeah, but all the artists there, these artists figure in the game. We want to make sure about buyers. So Tengsa is keep as Cypher Life in order for me to raise capital. And then lastly, there's a coffee business. I'm a coffee lover.
Coffee connoisseur.
Yes. Basically, what I was checking in that.
In other words, he's a drug dealer. In 2017, one of my friends who was a neighbor, Pablo, who went to cup tasters in Hungary. He's a barista and a brewer. So I was like, dude, I love coffee and I want to help you. So I helped him plug him. I plugged him, magazine, newspapers. So I was the guy behind him in actually promoting him, getting to Hungary. We are Hungary on the World Champs. Saudi Arabia, and he was about to go to Turkey and Portugal. He came back and he said, and I said to him, bro, when you come back to South Africa, let's start a brand. So we decided to mix two beans. The other one from South America, other one from Central Africa. And then we called it the Big Bag Blend.
So
Okay.
i-Big Park Blend ikhona ku-Facebook. We did a cup tasting eZimbalwa. We're doing another one in May, and you just follow DJ Seb on Facebook, Instagram ndikhona, naku Twitter ndikhona, TikTok ndingenile.
Yeah.
I am _ DJ Sebz because I'm also pushing my single Imali, featuring Utoko. YouTube ndikhona.
Links on the description.
Yeah.
Ikhona pha kunantsika ku YouTube iyafumaneka. Enkosi kakhulu. It's been a wonderful space, this one.
Thank you to Sebz. We appreciate you. DJ Sebz, media practitioner extraordinaire. We answered the question. We want more questions from you and possibly answers. We lack media representation, and yet we have so much creativity. Where do we go with it? You're the one that determines that. VJ, DJ Sebz, it's been the headspace. Another conversation.